The joint task force by the so-called Group of Five, Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania and Niger, to tackle the threat of terrorism in Africa's Sahel region is now operational, but a number of challenges remain, including funding, and the United Nations Security Council was told this week. Briefing the Council on the activities of the G5 Sahel Joint Force, the Assistant Secretary General for UN Peacekeeping Operations, El Kassim Wane, also noted the need to tackle cross-border crime and to impose targeted sanctions. On July the 2nd, the African countries launched a new multinational military force to tackle Islamist militants in the Sahel, which they say should be fully operational later in the year, despite its current budget shortfall. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says abject poverty, fast population growth, climate change, recurrent food and nutrition crisis, armed conflicts and violence converge dangerously and undermine the lives and assets and future prospects of millions of families across the Sahel region.
The G5 Sahel countries are undertaking tremendous efforts in multiple theaters across vast and inhospitable terrains and with limited resources to improve security in the Sahel and to counter violent extremism and drug and arms smuggling, including in the fight against Boko Haram and elsewhere in the region.
As worsening violence in South Sudan drives more people to run for their lives, the UN refugee chief is calling on warring parties, regional states and the international community to look for urgent ways to find peace. During a visit to Al Nimr refugee camp in East Darfur, Sudan, where he met South Sudanese refugees and their local hosts. South Sudan was plunged into war back in 2013 after a political disagreement between President Salva Kiir and opposition leader and former Vice President Riek Machar, which strained relations between the two. Kiir then sacked Machar as his deputy, triggering fighting between forces loyal to both men. More than 1.8 million people have fled the country since fighting erupted in that year 2013. And the refugee crisis could worsen as efforts to restore peace have so far proven unsuccessful.
Most of them say that the main worry is war, is conflict, threatening their children, threatening the women, threatening their livelihoods, their homes, but coupled with the lack of food. And of course, one thing compounds the other, clearly.
Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull unveiled the country's first national strategy for protecting crowded places on Sunday, a plan he said was initiated in the wake of a deadly vehicle attack in the French city of Nice last year. Australia has released a plan to protect public places from terrorism following an attack in Barcelona in which a van ran down pedestrians in the crowded Las Ramblas thoroughfare, killing 13 and injuring more than 100 people. Turnbull said the plan was designed for councils, businesses and other venue operators and will also seek to protect the public from offenders using guns, knives, bombs or chemical devices. The counter-terrorism strategy is publicly available online and outlines recommendations such as the installation of bollards around main streets, shopping centres and sporting grounds.
This is a part of our continuous program of optimising, improving the way we can keep Australians safe. Our agencies are the best in the world. I am so proud of our police, our security services, our intelligence services, our defence force. They're the best in the world. But we recognise that the threat is constantly evolving. And so what we have to do is make sure that we too are constantly improving and updating the measures we have to keep Australians safe.
Let's focus now on the frequency of attacks experienced in the world last week. It began when a 20-year-old Ohio man accelerated his car into a crowd of counter-protesters, killing a 32-year-old woman and wounding several others. And that started a debate about condemning white supremacists who also staged a protest against the removal of controversial figures of white Confederates in the U.S. Boko Haram attacked the village of Konduga in Borno State, killing 16 people and injuring 82 others, according to the police. And then the tide was turned on Europe as Spain and Finland recorded isolated attacks.
Spanish police are certainly on the hunt for the perpetrator of Thursday's van attack. At a news conference earlier on Sunday, they said operations are underway in Catalonia and on the French border as they try to find the Moroccan-born Younes Abou Yacoub, the 22-year-old they believe is the only one of 12 suspects still at large. The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attack, in which a van traveling at high speed drove through crowds of tourists and local people walking along Los Ramblas, leaving a trail of dead and 120 injured from 34 countries. Hours later, police shot dead 5 men wearing fake explosive belts in the Catalan seaside resort of Cambrils after they rammed holidaymakers with a car and stabbed others, killing 1 woman. Among the dead were nationals from other countries, including Portugal and the United States. Spain's King Felipe and Queen Letizia laid flowers and candles at a makeshift memorial in Barcelona on Saturday, August the 19th, to pay their respects at the site of an attack where 13 people died. The king was joined by Spain's Deputy Prime Minister, Soraya Sáenz de Santamaría, and Catalan Regional President Carles Puigdemont in Los Ramblas, where a speeding van plowed into crowds on Thursday, August the 17th. Hundreds of people stood around the memorial with candles and flowers and chanted, "I am not afraid." More than 100 people were injured in the Los Ramblas attack, many of them foreign tourists visiting Barcelona during the peak of the summer season. In the past 13 months, militants have used vehicles as weapons to kill nearly 130 people in France, Germany, Britain, Sweden, and Spain. Over in Finland, a man with a knife killed 2 people and wounded 8 others in a stabbing rampage in the market square in the Finnish city of Turku on Friday, August the 18th, police say. Police shot the suspected attacker in the leg and arrested him. They said they had yet to establish the identity of the man, who was of foreign origin, or his motive. Police warned people to stay away from the city and reinforced security nationwide with increased patrols and more surveillance in case more people were involved. People were allowed to return to the city center a few hours later. Finland is usually peaceful, but the Security Intelligence Service raised the terrorism threat level in June to elevated from low, saying it had become aware of terrorism-related plans in Finland.
When we come back after the break, we'll be speaking to President of the Association of Industrial Security and Safety Operators of Nigeria, Dr. Onai Komu, on what constitutes an act of terror and whether countries are doing enough to guard against it. Do join us again.